Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship had been exploring space for 3 months now, looking for signs of alien life. Earth's first deep space mission was going well until today. "Captain, we have something on sensors," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. "It's big, sir. Really big." Jake walked over to look at her screen. What he saw made his heart race. Ships. Dozens of them, all moving fast toward their position. But these ships looked nothing like anything humans had ever built. "Are they hostile?" Jake asked. "I don't think so, sir. They're not targeting us. They look like they're running from something." The alien ships got closer. Jake could see they were damaged. Some had holes in their hulls. Others were leaking strange gas into space. These ships had been in a fight and they had lost. "Amy, try to contact them," Jake ordered. Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. Finally, a voice came through the speakers. It sounded deep and strange, but the computer translated it into English. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Zethkar of the Zeltharian Republic. State your purpose." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship USS Horizon. We come in peace. Do you need help?" There was a long pause. Then the alien voice spoke again. "Humans? We have not heard of your species. You should leave this area immediately. The Corvan Empire will return soon." "We want to help," Jake said. "Your ships look damaged." Another long pause. "You do not understand, human. The Corvans are destroyers. They have been at war with us for 40 years. They destroy entire worlds. Billions of my people are dead." Jake felt cold. How many species are fighting this war? There were 63 species in our alliance when the war began. Now there are 12. The others are extinct. The Corvans kill everything they find. Amy looked at Jake with wide eyes. The bridge crew had gone quiet. Everyone was listening to this conversation. "We have ships," Jake said. "We have weapons. Let us help you fight." The alien admiral made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your ships are primitive, human. Your weapons would not damage Corvan shields. You would only die faster. How do you know what our weapons can do?" Jake asked. "We scanned your vessel. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. The Corvans would destroy you in minutes. Save your people. Run while you can." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea this war was happening. "Admiral Zethkar, can you come aboard our ship? I want to learn more about this war." "Why?" "So you can understand how hopeless it is. So we can understand how to win it." There was the longest pause yet. Finally, the admiral spoke. "You may transport to our flagship. But do not bring weapons. And do not expect to leave alive if the Corvans return." Jake turned to his crew. "Amy, you're with me. Everyone else, keep the ship ready to run if we need to." 20 minutes later, Jake and Amy found themselves in a transport beam. The feeling was strange, like being pulled apart and put back together. When the light faded, they were standing in a large room filled with alien beings. Admiral Zethkar was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. His species looked like they had evolved from birds, but they walked upright like humans. Around the room, Jake saw other species. Some looked like large insects. Others were covered in fur. One group looked almost human, but with silver skin. "Welcome to the last free ship of the Zeltharian fleet," the admiral said. "I am showing you this so you understand. This is all that remains of our species. 50 beings out of billions." Jake felt sick. What happened to the others? The Corvans do not take prisoners. They do not accept surrender. When they conquer a world, they kill every living thing on it. Then they strip the planet of all useful materials and move on. Amy spoke up. How many worlds have they destroyed? A new alien answered. This one looked like a large cat that walked on two legs. In 40 years? Over 300 worlds. Some had billions of people. Some had only millions. It does not matter to the Corvins. What do they want? Jake asked. Everything, Admiral Zethkar said. They believe they are the only species that deserves to exist. All others must die. Jake walked to a window and looked out at space. In the distance, he could see the damaged ships of the alien fleet. These beings had been fighting for 40 years against an enemy that wanted to kill everyone in the galaxy. Show me their ships, Jake said. Show me their weapons. The Admiral touched a control, and the room filled with holographic images. Jake saw Corvin warships. They were huge, black, and covered with weapons. The smallest one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy your entire planet, the Admiral explained. Their shields can stop any weapon we have. Their armor is nearly indestructible. Nearly? Amy asked. We have managed to destroy a few ships over the years. But for every Corvin ship we kill, they destroy 10 of ours. We are losing, human. Soon, we will all be dead. Jake studied the images. The Corvin ships were impressive, but he noticed something. They all looked the same. Every ship was built exactly like every other ship of its type. They don't change their designs much, do they? Jake observed. Why would they? Their ships are perfect killing machines. Nothing is perfect, Jake said. There's always a weakness. The Admiral's face showed what might have been sadness. Young species always think this way. The Corvins have been at war for thousands of years. They have conquered galaxies. There is no weakness to find. Jake turned away from the images. Will you share your technical data with us? Everything you know about Corvin ships and weapons? So you can study it before you die? Very well. But know this, human. When the Corvins come to your world, remember that I tried to warn you. As Jake and Amy prepared to return to their ship, the Admiral gave them a data crystal containing 40 years of intelligence about the Corvin Empire. Use it wisely, the Admiral said. It is the last gift the Zeltharian Republic will ever give. Back on the USS Horizon, Jake held the crystal and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an unstoppable enemy was coming. But Jake Morrison was human, and humans had never been very good at accepting the impossible. 3 months had passed since the USS Horizon returned to Earth with news of the Galactic War. The world had changed in those 3 months. Every nation on Earth was now working together, building weapons and ships as fast as they could. But it wasn't fast enough. General Lisa Parker stood in the command center deep under Cheyenne Mountain, watching the screens that showed space around Earth. For weeks, satellites had been picking up strange signals from the edge of the solar system. Today, those signals had become ships. How many? Lisa asked the technician at the sensor station. 50 confirmed contacts, General. They're big. Bigger than anything we've ever seen. Lisa nodded. She had studied the data from the Zeltharian Admiral. She knew what was coming. The Corvin Empire had found Earth. Send the alert to all military bases, she ordered. Operation Last Stand is now active. Across the planet, air raid sirens began to wail. In cities around the world, people looked up at the sky and saw lights that weren't stars. The Corvin fleet had arrived. Colonel Nick Davis was already in his fighter when the alert came through his radio. He was stationed on the carrier USS Enterprise, floating in the Pacific Ocean. Around him, other pilots were running to their planes. Listen up, people, Nick said over the radio. We all know what we're facing. These aliens have destroyed hundreds of worlds. But they've never faced humans before. His squadron launched into the night sky. Behind them, more fighters took off from carriers, from land bases, from anywhere humans could put a runway. In space, the few ships Earth had managed to build moved into position. Major Kate Williams was with the Army unit defending New York City. She watched through binoculars as the alien ships moved through Earth's atmosphere. They were huge, dark shapes that blocked out the stars. "Remember what we learned from the alien data," she told her soldiers. "The Corvins expect us to surrender when we see their ships. They've never fought an enemy that kept fighting when the odds were bad." The first Corvin ship settled over New York like a metal mountain. Weapons on its underside began to glow. "All units, take cover," Kate ordered. The beam that came down from the alien ship was bright enough to hurt the eyes. It hit the center of Manhattan and turned 6 city blocks into glass. But before the alien ship could fire again, missiles from all around the city slammed into its shields. The Corvin ship's shields held, but the ship rocked from the impact. On the Corvin bridge, Commander Vraktar studied his screens with confusion. "The humans are still fighting," his weapons officer reported. "They have seen our power, but they continue to attack." "Impossible," Vraktar said. "Show them more power. Destroy another section of their city." But as the Corvin ship charged its weapons again, human fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. They couldn't damage the ship's shields, but their constant attacks were stopping the Corvins from targeting the city below. Nick Davis flew his fighter straight at the alien ship's weapon systems. His missiles did no damage, but they forced the Corvin gunners to target him instead of the city. "This is Falcon Leader," he said over the radio. "I can't hurt this thing, but I can annoy it. All fighters, keep them busy." Around the world, the same scene was playing out. Corvin ships would destroy parts of human cities, expecting the humans to surrender. Instead, more human fighters would appear. More missiles would launch. The humans kept fighting even when their weapons couldn't win. In the Corvin command ship, Supreme Commander Thokran watched the battle reports with growing anger. His species had conquered thousands of worlds. Every other species had surrendered within hours of seeing Corvin power. But these humans were different. "Status report," he demanded. "We have lost no ships, Supreme Commander. But we have also failed to secure any population centers. The humans refused to surrender." "Then kill them all," Thokran ordered. "If they will not submit, they will die." But killing all the humans was harder than expected. When Corvin ships destroyed human military bases, new bases appeared overnight. When they shot down human fighters, more fighters took off from hidden runways. The humans seemed to have weapons and soldiers everywhere. Major Kate Williams was leading her soldiers through the ruins of downtown New York when her radio crackled. "Major, this is command. We're getting reports from around the world. The aliens are having trouble. They can't pin down our forces." Kate smiled as she set up another missile launcher in the rubble. "That's because they're used to fighting civilized wars against civilized enemies. They've never fought anyone crazy enough to keep shooting back." Above the city, the Corvin ship was still trying to complete its mission. But every time it tried to land troops or target civilians, human soldiers would attack from a new direction. The humans were like ghosts, appearing to fight and then disappearing before the Corvins could strike back. "Sir," the Corvin weapons officer said to his commander, "we have been fighting for 12 hours. Normally, enemy resistance ends after the first demonstration of our power." Commander Vraktar studied the tactical display. His ship had taken no damage, but it had also accomplished none of its objectives. The human city below was still full of fighters who refused to give up. "Request reinforcements," he finally said. "These humans are unusual." The request for help shocked the Corvin High Command. In 1,000 years of conquest, no species had forced a Corvin battle group to ask for backup on the first day of an invasion. 6 months later, the war was still going on. The Corvins controlled the space around Earth, but they did not control Earth itself. Human cities lay in ruins, but human soldiers still fought from those ruins. Human ships had been destroyed, but human engineers were building new ones in hidden factories. General Lisa Parker looked at the latest reports from around the world. The numbers were terrible. Millions of humans were dead. Most of Earth's major cities were damaged or destroyed. But the Corvin invasion had stalled. "They're bringing in more ships," her intelligence officer reported. "Satellite data shows another fleet arriving next week." "Let them come," Lisa said. "We're not the same species we were 6 months ago. We've learned how to fight these things." She was right. Human tactics were evolving faster than Corvin strategy could adapt. Human engineers were already building weapons based on captured alien technology. Human soldiers had developed new ways to fight enemies with better shields and armor. Most importantly, the humans had learned something the Corvins never expected any species to learn. They had learned that the Corvin Empire could be hurt. Their ships could be damaged. Their plans could be disrupted. Their perfect war machine could be forced to struggle. High above the Earth, in the Corvin command ship, Supreme Commander Thokran stared at the planet below. In 6 months of fighting, his forces had failed to conquer a single primitive world. For the first time in his long military career, he was beginning to understand what the word impossible meant. The humans were teaching it to him, one battle at a time. Commander Alex Thompson crouched in the wreckage of what used to be downtown Los Angeles. His special operations team was studying the crashed Corvin fighter they had brought down 3 days ago. It was the first intact alien ship humans had captured, and Alex was determined to learn everything he could from it. "Be careful with that power core," he told Sergeant Mike Johnson, who was helping to remove alien components. "We don't know what happens if it breaks." "Yes, sir," Mike replied. "But look at this, Commander. Their technology isn't magic. It's just really advanced engineering. We can figure this out." Alex nodded. That was exactly what he had been hoping to hear. For 8 months, the Corvin Empire had been attacking Earth with weapons and ships that seemed impossible. But impossible was just another word for, "we don't understand it yet." At Area 51 in Nevada, Dr. Helen Brooks was working 18 hours a day to understand Corvin technology. Her laboratory was filled with pieces of alien ships, weapons, and equipment that human forces had managed to capture or recover from battle sites. "The energy output is incredible," she told her research team. "But the basic principles are the same as our technology. They're just thousands of years ahead of us." "Can we copy it?" asked Dr. Robert Kim, her chief engineer. "Better than that," Helen said with a smile. "We can improve it. Look at this shield generator. It's designed to stop energy weapons and large projectiles. But it's not very good against small, fast objects." She showed him a computer simulation. "If we modify our missiles to break apart just before impact, the small pieces should go right through their shields." It was the kind of thinking that was happening all over the planet. Human engineers and scientists were not just copying alien technology. They were finding ways to make it better, or at least different enough to surprise the Corvins. On the battlefield, human tactics were changing just as fast. Sergeant Mike Johnson had become an expert in fighting Corvin ground troops. His Marines had developed new techniques for close combat with aliens who were stronger and tougher than humans. "Their armor is strong, but it has weak points," he explained to a group of new recruits. "Hit them in the joints. Go for the neck. Use their size against them." He demonstrated with a captured suit of Corvin armor. "They're used to fighting enemies who are bigger than them. They don't know how to fight someone smaller and faster." The recruits watched as Mike showed them how to get inside a Corvin soldier's guard, how to use their own armor against them, how to turn their strength into a weakness. "Most important thing," Mike said, "never fight fair. These things want to kill every human in the galaxy. So we use every trick we can think of." Those tricks were working. Human forces were starting to win individual battles against Corvin ground troops. It wasn't easy, and humans were still outnumbered, but they were proving that Corvin soldiers could be beaten. In space, similar changes were happening. Captain Steve Miller was flying one of the new hybrid fighters that combined human engineering with captured Corvin technology. The result was a ship that neither species had ever seen before. "This is incredible," he told his wingman over the radio. "We've got Corvin shields and weapons, but human flight systems. We can do things their ships can't do." He proved it by pulling his fighter through a series of maneuvers that would have been impossible in a pure Corvan design. Human pilots had different reflexes than alien pilots. They thought about three-dimensional combat differently. When human creativity met alien technology, the results surprised everyone. The Corvans were starting to notice these changes. In the command ship orbiting Earth, Supreme Commander Thokran studied the latest battle reports with growing concern. The humans are adapting faster than any species we have encountered, his intelligence officer reported. They are modifying our technology and developing new tactics daily. How is this possible? Thokran demanded. Our technology is perfect. Our tactics have succeeded for 1,000 years. Perhaps that is the problem, Supreme Commander. Our tactics succeed because we always fight the same kind of enemy. But these humans think differently. Thokran looked at the tactical displays showing Earth. Red marks showed where his forces controlled territory. Blue marks showed human strongholds. 6 months ago, the entire planet had been blue. Now it was a mix of red and blue, with the colors changing daily as battles raged back and forth. They are like a virus, he said. They adapt to everything we do. It was a good comparison. Human forces were learning from every battle, every captured piece of technology, every failed attack. What didn't kill them made them stronger, and they were getting stronger very quickly. Dr. Helen Brooks made her biggest breakthrough on a Tuesday morning. She had been studying Corvan shield technology for months, trying to understand how it worked. Suddenly, she saw something that changed everything. They're using a rotating frequency, she told her team excitedly. The shields change their protection pattern every few seconds to stop enemies from adapting. But if we can predict the pattern. She worked for 3 days straight, barely stopping to eat or sleep. Finally, she had it. A device that could predict Corvan shield frequencies and modify human weapons to match them. Test it, she told Dr. Kim. The first test was against a piece of Corvan hull armor protected by a captured shield generator. Human weapons had never been able to damage it before. But with Helen's new device, a simple missile punched right through the shield and destroyed the armor behind it. My God, Dr. Kim whispered. We can hurt them now. The breakthrough couldn't have come at a better time. Corvan reinforcements were arriving in the solar system every week. The aliens were bringing in more ships, more troops, more weapons. They were determined to finish what they had started. But the humans were ready for them. Commander Alex Thompson's special operations teams were now equipped with hybrid weapons that could damage Corvan armor. Sergeant Mike Johnson's Marines had new tactics that could defeat Corvan ground troops in fair fights. Captain Steve Miller's pilots were flying ships that combined the best of both technologies. Most importantly, the humans had learned the most dangerous lesson of all. They had learned that the Corvan Empire was not unbeatable. Every Corvan ship could be destroyed. Every Corvan soldier could be killed. Every Corvan plan could be disrupted. The Corvans had taught humans how to fight a galactic war. Now the humans were going to teach the Corvans what happened when you gave humans time to think. General Lisa Parker stood in her command center, watching as reports came in from battles around the world. For the first time since the invasion began, more Corvan forces were being destroyed than human forces. Ma'am, her intelligence officer said, we're getting reports that the Corvans are requesting massive reinforcements. They're calling for ships from other star systems. Lisa smiled. Good. Let them bring everything they have. We're not the same species they invaded 8 months ago. She was right. The humans had changed. They had learned. They had adapted. And now they were ready to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated the human race. The war was about to enter a new phase, and this time, the humans would not be fighting just to survive. They would be fighting to win. Admiral Rachel Davis stood on the bridge of the newly built human battleship USS Freedom, watching as her fleet moved toward the moon. 6 months ago, this fleet would have been impossible to imagine. Now it was humanity's first real chance to take the fight to the Corvans in space. Fleet status report, she called out. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, her communications officer replied. We have 27 vessels, all equipped with hybrid human-Corvan technology. Rachel nodded. It wasn't a large fleet by Corvan standards, but every ship had been built with hard-won knowledge of alien technology. More importantly, every ship was crewed by humans who had learned how to fight an enemy that had seemed unbeatable a year ago. The target was the Corvan base on the moon. The aliens had built it to control space around Earth, and it had been launching attacks on the planet for months. Today, the humans were going to take it back. Captain Steve Miller was in the cockpit of his fighter, the Freedom's Edge. Around him, 50 other pilots prepared for the first human space assault of the war. These weren't the desperate defensive fights they had been fighting for months. This was an attack. "Remember what we learned," Steve said over the radio to his squadron. "Corvan ships are tough, but they're not used to fighting enemies who think like us. Use that." His fighter was a perfect example of human adaptation. It had Corvan shields and energy weapons, but human flight controls and tactics systems. The result was a ship that could survive in space combat but fight in ways no Corvan pilot expected. On the moon's surface, Major Susan Clark was leading a team of Marines toward the Corvan base. They had landed on the far side of the moon, where Corvan sensors couldn't detect them. Now they were moving across the lunar landscape in modified spacesuits, carrying weapons that could punch through alien armor. "Target in sight," she reported through her radio. "The base is bigger than we thought, but it looks like our intelligence was correct. Most of their defenses face toward Earth." That was the key to the human plan. The Corvans had built their base to attack Earth, not to defend against an attack from space. They had never imagined that the primitive humans could mount a counteroffensive. The battle began when Steve Miller's fighters attacked the Corvan ships defending the moon base. The alien ships immediately moved to intercept them, expecting an easy victory against inferior human technology. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that moved in ways they had never seen before. Human pilots used three-dimensional thinking that confused Corvan tactics. They attacked from unexpected angles, used asteroid fields for cover, and coordinated their movements in patterns that alien computers couldn't predict. "This is Falcon Leader," Steve called over the radio as he dodged fire from a Corvan cruiser. "Their targeting systems can't keep up with our maneuvers. Press the attack." The human fighters swarmed around the larger Corvan ships like wasps attacking a bear. Individually, they were smaller and weaker. Together, they were deadly. On the USS Freedom, Admiral Rachel Davis watched the battle unfold on her tactical screens. The fight was going better than she had dared to hope. Human losses were light, while Corvan ships were taking serious damage. "All ships, advance to Phase 2, she ordered. "Target the moon base directly." The human fleet moved toward the lunar surface, their weapons charging. These were not the primitive missiles and kinetic weapons that Earth had started the war with. These were hybrid energy weapons that could damage Corvan shields and armor. Major Susan Clark and her Marines reached the Corvan base just as the space battle reached its peak. While the aliens were distracted by the fleet attack, the humans moved to assault the base from the ground. "Charges set on the main power generator," she reported. "Ready to move on your signal." "Wait for it," came the reply from Admiral Davis. "We want to coordinate this perfectly." The moment came when the human fleet fired their first full volley at the moon base. Energy beams and missiles slammed into the Corvan shields, overloading them. At the same instant, Susan's Marines detonated their charges inside the base. The Corvan shields flickered and failed. Suddenly, the alien base was defenseless against the human fleet's weapons. "All ships, concentrate fire," Admiral Davis ordered. "Destroy that base." What happened next shocked both sides. The Corvan base, which had seemed so powerful and threatening, was destroyed in less than 10 minutes. Human weapons, guided by human tactics and powered by hybrid technology, tore through alien defenses like they were made of paper. In the space around the moon, Corvan ships began to retreat. For the first time since the invasion began, alien forces were running away from human forces. Captain Steve Miller pursued the retreating Corvan ships, his squadron staying close behind. "This is incredible," he said over the radio. "They're actually afraid of us." It was true. The Corvin fleet was withdrawing not because they were out of ammunition or fuel, but because they could not understand what was happening. Human forces were supposed to be weak and primitive. They were not supposed to win battles in space. But the biggest surprise was still coming. As the Corvin ships tried to escape, Major Susan Clark and her Marines were fighting their way through the damaged moon base. Their mission was not just to destroy the base, but to capture alien technology and, if possible, alien prisoners. "I'm reading life signs in the command center," she reported. Moving to investigate. What she found changed everything. The Corvin command center was still intact, and inside it were 3 alien officers who had been knocked unconscious by the explosions. For the first time in the war, humans had captured live Corvin prisoners. "Admiral, this is ground team," Susan reported. "We have prisoners." "Repeat, we have live Corvin prisoners." The silence on the radio lasted for several seconds. Then Admiral Davis replied, "Understood, Major. Secure them for transport." This changes everything. It really did change everything. For months, humans had been fighting an enemy they knew almost nothing about. They knew Corvin technology and tactics, but they didn't know how Corvins thought, how their society worked, or what their long-term plans were. Now they would learn. As the human fleet returned to Earth, carrying their prisoners and a wealth of captured alien technology, the news of the victory spread around the planet. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had won a major battle. They had destroyed a Corvin base, captured alien technology, and taken prisoners. More importantly, they had proven that the Corvin Empire could be beaten. The aliens were not invincible. Their ships could be destroyed, their bases could be captured, and their plans could be disrupted. General Lisa Parker received the news in her command center deep under Cheyenne Mountain. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. "Send a message to all units worldwide," she ordered. "The counteroffensive has begun. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to win." In the Corvin command ship orbiting Earth, Supreme Commander Thokran stared at the reports from the moon base with something he had never felt before: fear. In 1,000 years of conquest, the Corvin Empire had never lost a major battle to a primitive species. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked his tactical officer. 7 destroyed, 12 damaged. "But Supreme Commander, that is not the worst news." "What could be worse?" "The humans captured the base command center. They have prisoners. They will learn our tactical codes, our strategic plans, our command structure." Thokran felt something cold in his chest. The humans had not just won a battle. They had gained intelligence that could change the entire war. For the first time, the Corvin Empire was facing an enemy that could learn from victory as well as defeat. And that enemy was getting stronger every day. Ambassador Tony Garcia stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, looking up at representatives from dozens of alien species. 6 months ago, he had never imagined he would be here. 6 months ago, most of these aliens had never heard of humanity. Now they were all staring at him with expressions that ranged from amazement to disbelief. "The reports cannot be accurate," said Councillor Vethran of the Altarian Assembly. "His species looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin. No primitive species has ever forced the Corvin Empire to retreat." Tony activated the holographic display he had brought with him. Images filled the air above the council chamber, showing the battle for Earth's moon, the destruction of the Corvin base, and the capture of alien prisoners. "The reports are accurate," Tony said calmly. "Humanity has been at war with the Corvin Empire for 10 months. We have not only survived their invasion, we have begun to push them back." A murmur went through the chamber. Admiral Zethkar of the Zeltharian Republic stood up from his seat. The alien officer looked older and more tired than when Tony had first met him through video communication. "With respect, Ambassador Garcia," the Admiral said, "what you describe is impossible. We have been fighting the Corvins for 40 years. We have lost hundreds of worlds. Our combined fleets cannot defeat even a single Corvin battle group." "That's because you've been fighting them the same way for 40 years, Tony replied. "Humans don't fight the same way twice if we can help it." He changed the display to show human tactical innovations. We adapt. We improvise. We find new solutions to old problems. Every time the Corvins think they understand how we fight, we change our methods. Counselor Hiruk of the Taurian Federation, a species that looked like large bears with opposable thumbs, leaned forward in his seat. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are weak. How do you defeat enemies with superior technology? We make their technology work for us, Tony said. The display showed human engineers reverse engineering Corvin devices. We don't just copy what we capture. We improve it. We make it do things the original designers never intended. The silence in the chamber stretched for long minutes. Finally, Prime Counselor Orith of the Delian Collective spoke. Her species resembled tall, graceful elves from human mythology. If what you say is true, she said carefully, then perhaps there is hope for the galaxy after all. But why should we believe that your species can succeed where so many others have failed? Tony smiled. Because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. He meant it as a joke, but the alien counselors took it seriously. They whispered among themselves in dozens of different languages. There is wisdom in that statement, Admiral Zethkar finally said. Perhaps we have been too intelligent for our own good. We saw the power of the Corvin Empire and accepted defeat before we tried to fight. Back on Earth, President Maria Lopez was addressing the United Nations for the first time since the invasion began. The assembly hall was damaged from Corvin attacks, but it was still standing. Like humanity itself, it was battered but not broken. My fellow humans, she said, we stand at a crossroads. We can continue to fight defensively, protecting our world from alien invaders. Or we can take the fight to them and help free the galaxy from tyranny. The decision had already been made. Intelligence from captured Corvin prisoners had revealed the scope of the Galactic War. Hundreds of species were extinct. Billions of beings had died. The Corvin Empire was a cancer that had been spreading across the galaxy for centuries. Earth will join the Galactic Alliance, President Lopez announced. We will share our technology, our tactics, and our soldiers with any species willing to fight for freedom. The announcement sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Within hours, alien ships were arriving in Earth orbit. Not Corvin ships coming to attack, but Alliance ships coming to learn. Colonel Ryan Adams found himself in the strange position of teaching alien soldiers how to fight. His training facility in Colorado was now home to beings from a dozen different worlds. The key is flexibility, he explained to a group of Zeltharian officers. The Corvins expect you to follow standard military doctrine. Don't give them what they expect. The alien officers watched as human Marines demonstrated urban combat techniques. The humans moved in ways that seemed chaotic to alien observers, but which were actually carefully coordinated. Your species has no standard doctrine, observed Captain Coral Th, a Zeltharian tactical specialist. Every unit fights differently. Exactly, Ryan said. That's our strength. The Corvins can't predict what we'll do because we don't know what we'll do until we do it. It was a very human way of thinking, and it was spreading throughout the Galactic Alliance. For the first time in decades, alien commanders were being encouraged to improvise, to take risks, to try tactics that had never been tested. Engineer Carol Johnson was having similar success sharing human manufacturing techniques with alien engineers. Her workshop in Detroit had become a laboratory where human and alien technologies were combined in new ways. Your production methods are inefficient, said Dr. Zener of the Rigelian technocracy, a species that looked like intelligent octopi. But they are also remarkably adaptable. Carol nodded. We've learned not to overspecialize. Every factory can be converted to make different products. Every worker can learn new skills. When the war started, car factories began making missiles. Computer companies started building fighter jets. The alien engineers studied the human production data with fascination. On my world, weapons factories make only weapons. Ship factories make only ships. This, flexibility, is completely foreign to us. Maybe that's why the Corvins have been winning, Carol suggested. They attack the same way, you defend the same way, and nobody tries anything new. It was a pattern that was being broken all across the Alliance. Human advisors were working with alien commanders to develop new strategies. Human engineers were helping alien scientists build hybrid technologies. Human tactics were being adapted for alien biology and psychology. Most importantly, the Alliance was starting to win battles. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as Alliance forces attacked a Corvan supply convoy. For the first time in 40 years, he was leading a victorious fleet action. "The human tactics are working," his tactical officer reported. "The Corvan ships cannot adapt to our new attack patterns." The battle was a perfect example of human influence on alien warfare. The Alliance ships attacked from multiple directions, using improvised formations that changed constantly during the fight. Corvan computers could not predict their movements because there was no pattern to predict. "They taught us that chaos can be a weapon," Zethkar said quietly. "Perhaps that is what we needed all along." The victory was small in galactic terms, but it was significant in others. Word spread through subspace communication that the Alliance had defeated a Corvan force without losing a single ship. For species that had been losing for decades, any victory was a miracle. On Earth, Tony Garcia received a message from the Galactic Council. The Alliance wanted to formalize humanity's membership. They wanted Earth to become the military headquarters for the war effort. "They're offering us command of the Alliance fleet," he reported to President Lopez. "They want human officers to lead the war against the Corvan Empire." President Lopez considered the offer carefully. It was an incredible responsibility. Just 1 year ago, humanity had been alone in the galaxy. Now they were being asked to lead a coalition of dozens of species in a war for the survival of galactic civilization. "What do you think?" she asked. Tony smiled. "I think the Corvans are about to learn what happens when you mess with the human race." In the Corvan command ship, Supreme Commander Thokran was studying reports that made no sense. Alliance forces were winning battles across the galaxy. Species that had been defeated and demoralized for decades were suddenly fighting with new tactics and new weapons. "It's the humans," his intelligence officer reported. "They are sharing their methods with every species in the Alliance. The infection is spreading." Thokran understood. Humanity was not just another species fighting for survival. They were a catalyst, changing everything they touched. They were teaching the galaxy how to fight back. For the first time in his long career, the Supreme Commander of the Corvan Empire began to consider the possibility that this war might not end in Corvan victory. The humans had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same. Fleet Admiral Kevin Brown stood on the observation deck of the massive space station that had been built in Earth orbit. 6 months ago, this station had not existed. Now it was the military headquarters for the largest fleet in galactic history. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of different worlds. Human vessels built with hybrid technology floated alongside alien cruisers and fighters. The combined fleet stretched as far as the eye could see. "Final ship count, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Laura Davis, his chief of staff. She was one of the human officers who had become experts in managing multi-species operations. 2,437 vessels from 43 different worlds. Kevin nodded. It was an incredible achievement. 1 year ago, most of these species had been fighting separate, losing battles against the Corvan Empire. Now they were united under human leadership, using tactics that had been proven effective against alien technology. "Status of the joint training programs?" he asked. "All alien crews have completed basic human tactical training," Laura replied. "Integration exercises are showing remarkable improvement in fleet coordination." The integration had not been easy. Different species had different ways of thinking about warfare, different technologies, and different methods of communication. But human officers had worked around the clock to find ways to make it all work together. Chief Petty Officer Dan Wilson was leading one of the joint boarding parties that had become the fleet's secret weapon. His team included humans, Zeltharians, Rigelians, and Taurians, each bringing their own skills to the mission. "Remember," he told his mixed crew, "we're not just capturing ships. We're capturing technology, intelligence, and prisoners. Every Corvan ship we take intact makes the whole fleet stronger." The alien members of his team had been skeptical at first. Boarding enemy ships during battle seemed insane to species that had been fighting defensive wars for decades. But human marines had developed techniques that made it possible, and the results were impressive. "Your species has a talent for violence," observed Sergeant Kethera, a Taurian warrior who looked like a cross between a bear and a lion. "But it is violence with purpose." Dan laughed. "We prefer to call it aggressive problem solving. If something is in our way, we don't go around it. We go through it." That philosophy was changing how the entire Alliance approached warfare. For 40 years, alien fleets had tried to avoid direct confrontation with Corvin forces. Human tactics emphasized attacking the enemy wherever possible, disrupting their plans, and never giving them time to establish secure positions. On the bridge of the Alliance flagship, Admiral Zethkar was working with human tactical officers to plan the next major operation. The Zeltharian admiral had become one of humanity's strongest supporters in the Alliance command structure. "The target system has been under Corvin control for 15 years, he explained to the planning staff. 3 inhabited planets, all strip-mined for resources. The survivors are used as slave labor." Captain Mary Foster, the human tactical coordinator, studied the intelligence data. "What's their fleet strength?" 120 ships, including 2 super-heavy cruisers. "It should be an impossible target." Mary smiled. "Good thing we specialize in impossible targets. Let's see what we can do." The plan that emerged was typically human in its audacity. Instead of attacking the Corvin fleet directly, the Alliance would attack the system's infrastructure. Boarding parties would capture the orbital mining stations while the main fleet engaged the Corvin ships. Meanwhile, ground forces would land on the planets to free the slave populations. "This plan requires perfect timing," Admiral Zethkar observed. "If any element fails, the entire operation could be a disaster." "Then we'll make sure nothing fails," Mary replied. "That's what humans do." The operation launched 3 days later. Fleet Admiral Kevin Brown commanded from the Alliance flagship as 2,000 ships moved through hyperspace toward the target system. It was the largest military operation in galactic history, and it was being led by a species that had only learned about galactic warfare 18 months earlier. The battle began when Chief Petty Officer Dan Wilson's boarding parties hit the Corvin mining stations. Using small, fast ships that could avoid detection, the Alliance forces struck at a dozen targets simultaneously. "Station 7 secure," Dan reported over the communications system. "We've got control of their orbital refinery. And we've freed about 3,000 alien slaves." Similar reports came in from other boarding teams. The Corvin slave operation was much larger than intelligence had suggested, with hundreds of thousands of beings from dozens of species being worked to death in the alien mines. "This is why we fight," Admiral Zethkar said quietly, watching the rescue operations on his tactical display. "This is what the Corvins do to every world they conquer." The main fleet engagement began when the Corvin ships moved to defend their mining operations. But they found themselves facing tactics they had never encountered before. The Alliance fleet attacked in waves, with each wave using different formations and strategies. "Human vessel patterns are unpredictable," the Corvin fleet commander reported to his superiors. "They do not follow standard tactical doctrine. Our computers cannot anticipate their movements." That was exactly what the human planners had intended. Instead of using one large formation, the Alliance fleet fought as dozens of smaller groups, each adapting its tactics to the local situation. When one group was defeated, another would attack from a different direction with completely different methods. Lieutenant Commander Laura Davis coordinated the chaos from the flagship's tactical center. She had become an expert in managing the kind of fluid, improvised warfare that humans excelled at. "Group 7, swing around to attack Vector 4, she ordered. "Group 12, prepare for a boarding action on the Corvin command ship." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Corvin fleet had been completely destroyed or captured. More importantly, the Alliance had freed an entire star system and rescued nearly 1 million slaves. "Casualties?" Fleet Admiral Kevin Brown asked. "Light," Laura reported. "We lost 47 ships, mostly from the initial assault wave. But we captured 83 Corvin vessels intact. It was an incredible victory," but it was also something more important. It was proof that the Alliance could win major battles against entrenched Corvan positions. The tide of the Galactic War was finally turning. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. On dozens of worlds, beings who had lived under Corvan oppression for decades began to hope that freedom might be possible. On Earth, President Maria Lopez addressed the planet from the rebuilt United Nations building. Today, the Alliance freed an entire star system from Corvan tyranny. This is just the beginning. We will not stop until every world in the galaxy is free. In the Corvan Empire's capital system, Emperor Grakthul received the news of the defeat with growing rage. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was losing territory instead of gaining it. How is this possible? He demanded of his military advisors. The humans are a primitive species. They should not be capable of defeating our fleets. The humans have changed everything, Emperor, replied Supreme Commander Thokran. They do not fight like any species we have ever encountered. They adapt faster than we can respond. They turn our own advantages against us. Then we will destroy them completely, the Emperor declared. Assemble the Grand Fleet. We will crush this human infestation before it spreads further. But the human infestation had already spread throughout the galaxy. Human tactics, human technology, and human determination were transforming the Alliance into something the Corvan Empire had never faced before, an enemy that refused to give up and never stopped learning. Fleet Admiral Kevin Brown received intelligence about the Corvan Grand Fleet with satisfaction rather than fear. How many ships? He asked. Approximately 5,000 vessels, Laura reported. The largest fleet the Corvan Empire has ever assembled. Kevin smiled. Good. When we defeat them, the war will be over. It was a very human way to think about an overwhelming enemy force. Instead of planning how to avoid the Corvan Grand Fleet, the Alliance was already planning how to destroy it. The galaxy was about to witness the largest space battle in history, and for the first time in decades, the forces of freedom had a real chance of winning. General Paul Martinez stood in the command bunker of the Alliance assault ship, looking at holographic displays showing the Corvan homeworld. After 2 years of brutal war across the galaxy, the Alliance had finally reached the heart of the Empire. The planet below was heavily fortified, surrounded by massive orbital defense platforms and protected by the largest fleet the Corvans had ever assembled. Intelligence estimates, he asked his staff. 50 million Corvan military personnel on the surface, reported Colonel Lisa Chong, his intelligence chief. Over 300 orbital defense platforms. The planetary shields are the strongest we've ever encountered. Paul nodded grimly. The final battle would be the hardest yet. But the Alliance had learned much about fighting Corvans over the past 2 years. They were not the same forces that had barely survived the initial invasion of Earth. What about civilian populations? He asked. That's the problem, sir. There are no Corvan civilians. Their entire society is militarized. Every Corvan is a soldier, from birth to death. It was a sobering thought. The Alliance would be fighting an entire planet of warriors who would never surrender. But after seeing what the Corvans had done to hundreds of other worlds, Paul knew there was no choice. The Empire had to be stopped here, or it would continue its expansion across the galaxy. In space above the planet, Fleet Admiral Kevin Brown commanded the largest battle fleet in galactic history. 4,000 Alliance ships faced 5,000 Corvan vessels in the final confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. All ships report ready, announced Lieutenant Commander Laura Davis from her position at the tactical station. The Corvans are moving to intercept us. Signal the fleet, Kevin ordered. Begin Operation Final Freedom. The space battle that followed was unlike anything ever seen in the galaxy. Instead of the organized formations that alien species traditionally used, the Alliance fleet attacked in a swirling chaos of small groups and individual ships. Human tactical doctrine had evolved over 2 years of constant warfare, and it had taught every Alliance species to fight with unprecedented flexibility. Major Julie Edwards led the first wave of atmospheric fighters toward the planet's surface. Her mixed squadron of human and alien pilots had been training for months to assault the Corvan orbital defenses. Remember the plan, she said over the radio. We're not trying to destroy all the platforms. we just need to open holes in their defenses for the main assault. Her fighters dove toward the massive orbital defense stations, dodging fire from weapons that could destroy capital ships. But the platforms had been built to engage large targets, not small, fast fighters that moved in unpredictable patterns. Platform 7 showing shield fluctuations, reported Lieutenant Chris Park, flying beside her. Looks like our new anti-shield missiles are working. The Alliance had spent 2 years developing weapons specifically designed to fight Corvin technology. Every battle had provided new intelligence, every captured ship had revealed new weaknesses. Now those lessons were being put to the ultimate test. On the planet's surface, the Corvin High Command watched the battle with growing concern. War Master Thokran, now the supreme military leader of the Empire, studied the tactical displays with disbelief. How are they coordinating their attacks? He demanded. Their fleet movements make no strategic sense. That appears to be their strategy, War Master, replied his tactical advisor. They fight without patterns that our computers can predict. Our automated defenses cannot target them effectively. It was the culmination of everything humans had taught the galaxy about warfare. Instead of following established doctrine, Alliance forces improvised constantly. No two attacks were the same. No formation was repeated. Every ship captain was encouraged to adapt to local conditions and take initiative. The orbital defense platforms began to fall one by one. Not destroyed by massive weapons, but overwhelmed by swarms of small ships that attacked from every possible angle. The Corvin defenses had been designed to stop conventional fleets, not the chaotic, adaptive assault that was hammering them. Breach in the planetary shield grid, reported Major Julie Edwards. Section 12 is open for landing operations. General Paul Martinez smiled grimly. Launch the ground assault. All units, go go go. Thousands of landing craft descended toward the Corvin homeworld, carrying Alliance ground forces for the final battle. Leading them were human Marines who had spent 2 years learning how to fight Corvin soldiers in every possible environment. Sergeant Mike Johnson, now a veteran of dozens of battles, led his mixed unit of human and alien soldiers toward the primary military complex. His squad included Zeltharians, Taurians, Rigelians, and humans, all working together with tactics that had been refined through constant combat. Remember, he told his troops as their landing craft approached the surface, Corvins don't surrender. They'll fight to the death. But they're not used to enemies who fight harder than they do. The ground battle was fierce beyond description. Corvin's soldiers were larger, stronger, and more heavily armed than most Alliance troops. But they had been fighting the same way for centuries, while the Alliance had learned to adapt and evolve. Use their strength against them, Mike shouted to his squad as they fought through the streets of a Corvin military city. They're powerful but not flexible. Keep moving, keep changing tactics. His alien squad mates had learned well from human instructors. The Zeltharians used their natural agility to attack from unexpected directions. The Taurians used their great strength to break through Corvin defensive positions. The Rigelians used their technical skills to disable enemy equipment. Most importantly, they all fought with the human philosophy that no situation was hopeless if you were willing to try something new. The battle for the Corvin homeworld raged for 3 days. In space, the Alliance fleet gradually destroyed or captured the defending ships. On the surface, Alliance ground forces fought their way toward the planetary capital. Major Julie Edwards led airstrikes against Corvin command centers, using fighter tactics that confused alien ground defenses. Her pilots attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, making it impossible for the Corvins to concentrate their fire. The enemy is adapting to our assault patterns, her wingman reported. Then we'll change the patterns, Julie replied. Again. It was pure human thinking. When something stopped working, try something else. When the enemy adapted to your tactics, develop new tactics. Never stop evolving, never stop learning, never stop fighting. On the 3rd day of the battle, Alliance forces finally reached the Corvin Imperial Palace. General Paul Martinez led the final assault personally, fighting alongside soldiers from 20 different worlds. Inside the palace, Emperor Grakthul waited with his personal guard. The Corvin ruler had never imagined that his capital world could be invaded. The Empire had conquered galaxies. It had exterminated hundreds of species. It was supposed to be invincible. How did this happen? He asked War Master Thokran as Alliance soldiers fought their way through the palace corridors. The humans, Emperor. They changed everything. They taught the galaxy how to fight us. The final confrontation took place in the Imperial throne room. Paul Martinez and his soldiers burst through the reinforced doors to find the Corvan leadership waiting for them. I am Emperor Grak Thul, the alien ruler declared. You cannot defeat the Corvan Empire. We are eternal. We are unstoppable. Paul stepped forward, his weapon trained on the Emperor. Behind him, human and alien soldiers filled the room. Your empire is finished, Paul said calmly. Your fleets are destroyed. Your homeworld is conquered. It's over. The Emperor looked around at the Alliance soldiers. Humans, Zeltharians, Taurians, Rigelians, and dozens of other species, all working together. All united by tactics and philosophies that the human race had taught them. This is impossible, the Emperor whispered. You are inferior species. You should not be able to defeat us. That's what everyone keeps saying, Paul replied. But you know what? Humans are really bad at accepting what's supposed to be impossible. With the capture of the Corvan Emperor and the fall of the homeworld, the war was effectively over. Across the galaxy, Corvan forces began surrendering as news of the defeat spread. An empire that had seemed unstoppable for centuries had been brought down by a coalition led by a species that had only learned about galactic warfare 3 years earlier. In space above the conquered planet, Fleet Admiral Kevin Brown received surrender offers from Corvan commanders throughout the galaxy. The greatest military machine in galactic history was asking for mercy from enemies it had considered primitive. What are your orders, Admiral? Asked Lieutenant Commander Laura Davis. Kevin looked out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds that could now be free, all the species that could rebuild their civilizations. Accept their surrenders, he said. The war is over. Now we start building peace. But as the Alliance celebrated its victory, they all knew that the galaxy had been changed forever. The age of Corvan domination was over, but something new was beginning. And at the center of it all was a young species that had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all: sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to refuse to accept that it can't be solved. Senator Chris Baker stood before the newly formed Galactic Senate, looking out at representatives from over 200 species. 3 years ago, most of these beings had been slaves, refugees, or resistance fighters hiding from the Corvan Empire. Now they were free citizens of a galaxy that was rebuilding itself from the ashes of war. The question before us today, Chris said to the assembled delegates, is not how to govern this galaxy, but how to make sure that something like the Corvan Empire never rises again. The debate that followed was intense but respectful. Every species had suffered under Corvan rule. Every world had lost millions of people to the Empire's endless expansion. But now they had a chance to build something better. Admiral Zethkar, now representing the restored Zeltharian Republic, stood to address the Senate. The human species taught us many things during the war. But perhaps the most important lesson was this: freedom must be defended actively, not passively. It was a lesson that had been learned at great cost. For centuries, peaceful species had tried to avoid conflict with aggressive neighbors. The result had been the rise of empires like the Corvans, who viewed peaceful intent as weakness to be exploited. We propose the establishment of a galactic defense force, Chris announced. Not to conquer, but to protect. Not to expand, but to ensure that all species can develop freely without fear of extinction. The proposal was revolutionary. Never before had the galaxy seen a truly united military force dedicated to protection rather than conquest. But the war had proven that cooperation between species could achieve things that none of them could accomplish alone. Captain Emma Foster was already putting those principles into practice. She commanded the first integrated exploration fleet, searching the galaxy for survivors of species that the Corvans had supposedly exterminated. Her ship, the New Horizon, carried scientists and diplomats from dozens of worlds. Signal from the surface, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Sam Roberts. We're reading life signs that match the genetic profile of the Altarian species. Emma smiled. The Altarians had been declared extinct by the Corvan Empire 15 years ago. But intelligence from captured Corvan records suggested that some survivors might have escaped to hidden colonies. Prepare a landing party, she ordered. And make sure we bring medical supplies. If there are Altarian survivors down there, they've been hiding for 15 years. The rescue mission was typical of the new galactic age. Instead of conquering or exploiting, the Alliance was dedicating resources to finding and helping the lost and forgotten. Every rescued species added their knowledge and culture to the growing galactic community. On Mars, Dr. Alan Torres was putting the finishing touches on the Galactic Military Academy. The Red Planet had been transformed into a training center where officers from every Alliance species learned the tactical and strategic principles that had won the war. The key to our success, he explained to a class of alien cadets, was not superior technology or overwhelming force. It was adaptability. The ability to change when change was needed. The alien students came from dozens of different worlds, each bringing their own perspective on warfare and strategy. But they were all learning the human philosophy that had revolutionized galactic conflict: think flexibly, adapt constantly, and never accept that any problem is unsolvable. Lieutenant Commander Coral Th, a Zeltharian officer who had fought in the final battle for the Corvan homeworld, raised her hand. Instructor Torres, how do we ensure that future officers maintain this flexibility? Won't they eventually develop their own rigid doctrines? Alan smiled. It was a very good question, and one that human military theorists had been debating since the end of the war. That's why we rotate instructors and students constantly, he explained. No one stays here long enough to establish fixed patterns. Every class learns from teachers with different experiences and different approaches. It was part of a larger philosophy that was reshaping galactic civilization. Instead of allowing societies to become rigid and unchanging, the new alliance encouraged constant exchange of ideas, people, and cultures. What had made humanity dangerous to the Corvans was now making the entire galaxy stronger. Former Supreme Commander Thokran, now a war crimes prisoner on a rehabilitation colony, watched these developments with a mixture of amazement and confusion. The Corvan Empire had been built on the principle that only the strongest deserve to survive. The humans had proven that cooperation could be stronger than conquest. I do not understand these beings, he told Dr. Sarah Kim, the human psychologist who was working with former Corvan officers to help them adapt to a peaceful galaxy. They defeated us completely, but they did not exterminate us. Why? Because that's not who we are, Sarah replied. Humans believe that everyone deserves a chance to change, to grow, to become better than they were. It was a difficult concept for former Corvans to understand. Their society had been based on eliminating weakness and destroying enemies. The idea that former enemies could become allies was almost incomprehensible to them. But slowly, some former Corvan officers were beginning to adapt. They were learning new ways of thinking, new approaches to problem solving. A few had even requested to join the Galactic Defense Force, wanting to use their military skills to protect rather than destroy. Back on Earth, President Maria Lopez was meeting with leaders from around the planet to discuss humanity's role in the new galactic order. The war had changed Earth as much as it had changed the galaxy. The human race had gone from being an isolated species to being the acknowledged leaders of galactic civilization. We have responsibilities now that we never imagined, she told the assembled world leaders. Every decision we make affects billions of beings across thousands of worlds. It was a sobering thought. Human ideas about warfare, government, technology, and society were spreading throughout the galaxy. Young alien beings were learning human languages, studying human history, and adopting human attitudes about freedom and adaptability. Are we ready for this responsibility? Asked Prime Minister Jean Du Bois of the European Federation. We have to be, Maria replied. Because the alternative is to let the galaxy slip back into the kind of thinking that created the Corvan Empire in the first place. The conversation was interrupted by an aide who brought news from the frontier regions. Madam President, we're receiving reports of first contact with a previously unknown species. They're from outside our galaxy, and they're asking to meet with human representatives. Maria felt a familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. Even with the Corvan Empire defeated, the universe was still full of unknowns. There would always be new challenges, new threats, new opportunities for both cooperation and conflict. Send a diplomatic mission, she ordered. And make sure they understand our principles. We come in peace, but we're prepared to defend ourselves and our allies. It was a very human approach to the unknown. Not naive optimism, but not paranoid aggression either. A balanced response that acknowledged both the potential for friendship and the need for vigilance. Senator Chris Baker received the news while the Galactic Senate was still in session. He shared it with the assembled delegates, watching their reactions carefully. "This is our first test as a unified galaxy," he announced. "How we handle this contact will set the tone for our future relationships with other galactic civilizations." The debate that followed showed how much the galaxy had changed. Instead of each species trying to handle the situation separately, they worked together to develop a unified response. Human diplomatic principles were combined with alien expertise to create an approach that no single species could have developed alone. Admiral Zethkar summed up the consensus: "We will meet these beings as equals, not as conquerors or potential victims. We will share our knowledge freely but maintain our defenses responsibly. And we will remember that the greatest strength of our alliance is our diversity." As the session ended and delegates returned to their home worlds, the news of the new contact spread throughout the galaxy. On thousands of planets, billions of beings looked up at the stars with curiosity rather than fear. Captain Emma Foster received new orders to investigate the unknown contact. As her ship prepared to leave the solar system, she stood on the bridge thinking about how much had changed since the first human ship had encountered Admiral Zethkar's fleeing fleet. "Ready for departure, Captain," reported Lieutenant Sam Roberts. "Take us out," Emma ordered. "Let's go see what's out there." The New Horizon jumped to hyperspace, carrying the hopes and dreams of a galaxy that had learned to work together. Behind them, the combined fleets of the Galactic Defense Force stood ready to protect the freedom that had been won at such great cost. The galaxy was no longer the same. The stars themselves seemed different now, filled with the light of cooperation rather than the darkness of conquest. And at the center of it all was a young species that had taught the universe a simple but powerful truth: sometimes the best way to change the galaxy is to refuse to accept that it can't be changed. Humanity had joined the Galactic War, and the stars would never be the same. But that was exactly what the universe needed: a species crazy enough to believe that impossible problems deserved impossible solutions, and determined enough to make those solutions work. The age of human leadership in galactic affairs had begun, and the galaxy was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead among the infinite stars.